Hi, friends. So today, I want to get into really the kind of the nitty gritty of emotional repression and suppression and what it is. This is what is making up the shadow content of the unconscious and what is probably contributing to your symptoms. So, when we get into the shadow content and start working with the suppressed and repressed emotions, we're working with things that have never had a chance to complete. When we were children, if we weren't allowed to express ourselves, these expressions, these emotions never had a chance to complete. They got pushed down. All right. And over time, the brain learned that these were dangerous. And over time, we got symptoms instead because the brain started to see anything that started to come up in the subconscious as dangerous. So going forward, what we want to do is we want to learn to access those emotions. And for many of us, this is not an easy thing. People think, oh, I've been sitting and feeling my emotions all day and sitting for hours or whatever. And it's like, that's not usually what accessing repression looks like. Usually we have to make it a little bit more skillful because repression means that we can't feel that. We're unable to feel exactly what we're feeling, okay? And we might have experienced some of the emotion, but often is the case that we are pushing things aside, sweeping them under the rug to get by, to survive, okay? So going forward, I did a video a couple of weeks ago on the negative thinking, and it used what I call the lightning journal approach. And the lightning journal approach, I was trained in a form of ISTDP, which is intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy. And what it is designed to do is when you're working with a therapist is to get into the raw expression of an emotion. And sometimes it can be quite intense. That's why it's called intensive. And it's not designed to be sitting there for hours. It's designed to be done in like 30 seconds or a minute at the most. It's designed to be short and intense to get the expression out. And I designed the journaling part in place of working with a therapist. And I have found that it works just fine. But the key here is for you to get really into what you're feeling about things. And they're going to be unacceptable. They're going to be things that you probably won't want to face. And that's the point. That's why we have symptoms, because there's things that we just never wanted to face, never wanted to really, really feel. But we want to now because these feelings need to be completed. The energy needs to be expressed so that completion can happen. And expression doesn't mean going out and yelling at your neighbor or your boss or your coworker or your kids. Expression means get it out and do it consistently and regularly, because it is consistency that is going to start telling your brain that what you're feeling is safe. And once I started using the lightning journaling process, I would have a little bit of a flare and I would sit down and lo and behold, I had a ton of fear that I didn't know was in there. And I would write it out and I'd get up and the flare was, 90% less. And so this stuff really does work. But it is about consistency and getting really honest. Now, I talked about the journaling in that last video on negative thinking, and it was about looking at the looping thoughts. But you can just be walking around or noticing that you have some symptoms and say, I need to journal. I need to see what's in here, okay? And then once again, you take your pen, right? And you start writing into an energy that you're feeling. Maybe you just went for a walk and you started getting a flare and you notice that you're feeling uneasy. Okay? Come in, grab your pencil and your paper, do it right away, and write down how you're feeling about walking down the street. And that's how mundane it gets, right? We want it to be real, we want it to be relevant, and we want it to be right now, not about what happened 3 months ago. We want it to be present, because that's where the emotion is. It's in the present. And so you start writing about what's happening right now, or what was happening walking down the street. And you might start with a few words. I was walking down the street and all of a sudden I'm feeling a little scared or a little bit pissed off that my symptoms aren't gone, or just whatever it is, and start getting that energy out on the page. And you'll notice that within a few words, the words will go away. And then you're in that space of pure energy. And you're scribbling on the page, and you're scribbling and you're scribbling and you're getting it out. Get it out. That's what it should feel like. It's got to get out. It has to express. This is different than releasing. This is expression. And you might find yourself going into rage or terror. You might find yourself scribbling intensely. You might ripping the paper. You might get images of violence in your mind. That's okay. This is how ISTDP works. Intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy. It means it's getting into the unacceptability. Things that you were unwilling to accept about yourself. And this is, it's the real deal. It's the nitty-gritty shit of mind-body recovery. And if you want to get better, you'll do this. Instead of do a little journaling once a week or do a little meditation. No, you have to really, really want to get into this nitty-gritty stuff. Because it's not about the symptoms. It's not about avoiding food or exercise or whatever it is. It's about getting into the nitty-gritty of the shadow material, the unacceptability of your stuff. And once you get it on the page and you'll know 30 seconds, a minute, I usually can do like 1 page, 2 pages sometimes, but it'll start to end. The energy will start to fade. And that's when you'll know that it's coming to a completion. And this is so wonderful, right? And when you see it fading, you don't have to push anymore. Just know intuitively from yourself when it's time to stop. And then put your hand on your heart. And tell yourself you're fine. You got this. You're good. And bring yourself back to a place of normalcy. And allow whatever is here to be perfectly fine. Whatever you wrote on that page, allow it to be perfectly acceptable. because it is. It's human. It's human to get pissed off at people that are shitty to you. It's human. And so this is why the expression of emotion, it's where you were never allowed to express before. Okay? I'm trying to move away from that funny light. It's the expression of all the things that you really, really feel inside. And this is why it's the nitty-gritty. This is why mind-body recovery and shadow work is the nitty-gritty. It's not trying to be all peaceful and feeling safe and feeling expansive and knowing your true nature. You know, these things help us balance things out. But if we really want to complete the cycle of what is unresolved in the unconscious, this is where we need to go. Into the nitty-gritty. Okay? So try it. It's simple, right? It's a simple process. And you can take the things that you think are insignificant or that you think don't really matter, because those are the ones that usually matter more. Repression is very subtle. Repression happens without our even being aware of it. Okay? And this is what we're doing. We're getting into things that we were not aware of. So none of this is your fault. None of this is my fault. We learned these strategies when we were young. And repression and suppression is something we learned to stay safe. It was survival. But it's not safe. So gradually the brain is not feeling safe more and more. And there will be layers and layers and layers of things. You thought you were afraid of one thing, but you might be afraid of a lot of other things too. You thought you were angry about one thing, you might be angry about a lot of other things too. Wherever the repression lies, there's usually lots and lots of layers. And that's been my experience. And they will become increasingly more subtle and hard to detect. So we want to get practiced at this. We want to get good at getting into the nitty-gritty. Okay? All right, I hope this was helpful. Have a great day. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.